everybody. I'm Dr. Rebecca Troy, and I would love to welcome you to another one of our graduate case study reviews. If you've never been with us before, we do these case study reviews every other week for two big reasons. Number one, we want to celebrate our amazing client graduates because of the amazing life-changing results that they've gotten. And we also want to inspire hope. So for those of you who have children with dyslexia, you likely know that these can be multi-year journeys. They can be very difficult, very emotion-filled. And so to see a child go from really, really struggling to doing amazing things within a period of 5 months is something that actually gets some pretty significant attention. People say, gosh, what is going on? So I'm very, very excited to welcome all of you. Thank you so much. And we're really lucky because we actually have the very person that we're talking about on this call. So Maria, I will allow you to share as much as you want to or would like to. And if you want to interject and actually tell parts of the story, you are welcome to do that. I will give the floor over to you because who better to explain what happened than you? So I want to just begin today by kind of giving you an overview of who we're talking about. So today we're gonna celebrate Juliette, a 10-year-old who went from being 26% accurate in her phonological awareness to 100% accurate in 5 months. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this and what that means. But she had a very, very significant case of dyslexia when we began working with her. In her wide range achievement test 5, she went from the 34th percentile to the 93rd percentile. That's just amazing in 5 months. Spelling went from the 4th percentile to the 55th. And if we could have counted all of the words that she had phonetically correctly, she would have been at the 99th percent for spelling as well. And so a couple of the quotes, Maria, that I pulled out that I thought were just so powerful that you said is, who would she be if I didn't do this? And who will she be now that I did? Which is just so powerful because you do have a choice. And I think people are now realizing more and more with additional studies and neural scans that we continue to have all of the time, that the brain is a pliable organ. We do have the possibility to change things. And so for Maria, she really leaned in and said, yeah, this is absolutely something that I have in my control, and I will be leaning in to support her. In addition, that little girl who ran circles around adults with her ideas, she's back. So just amazing. So just a couple of things to kind of give you context for what we're about to share. Everything that happened in this case happened in Maria's home. So maybe they went out to a restaurant and they did some outside, but everything that they did actually happened in their home within that 5 months. And so we do employ these cutting edge neuroscience techniques that do help kids to reorganize how their brain is responding to language, which make massive gains in reading and spelling within just a few months. But we give those tools and the coaching to parents. And so everything that we're about to talk about is something that happened because Maria implemented this with our coaching and support. So just for context, excuse me. So before we dive into Maria's case, I really do want you all to understand dyslexia more deeply because I think this is fundamental to you getting the right support that your child needs. So on the screen, you can see two fMRI images. One on the left is of a non-dyslexic person, and the one on the right is of a person with dyslexia. And what you'll notice is that there is a different neurological profile during a language task. So if we were to have these people at rest, we wouldn't notice anything significantly different about the way that the brain is functioning. But the minute that we say, I want you to spell something, I'd like you to read something, please write this paragraph, please read this paragraph, there is a very, very different activity that occurs in the brain that makes it nearly impossible for the person with dyslexia to engage in the same way. So you'll notice in the back of the brain here, we have activity in what's called the occipital lobe, or where vision is controlled. But when you look at that in a person with dyslexia, there literally is not activity activity there. In addition, we've got significantly more activity in the parietal temporal lobes over the ear, whereas the person with dyslexia really doesn't. And so what that really means is that there is a disconnect in the brain between sight and sound, which is why when you ask a child to spell something, they might add letters in that don't belong, or they might omit letters that should have been there that they just were not able to hear and connect to the sounds. And so that does happen very regularly. It'll also show up like if you asked a child to read a word, they might really try hard to do that. They see the same exact word on the next line and it's like they've never seen it before. So all of those are symptomatic of the brain just not firing in the way that we need it to for language. And so this is the same information, but with EEGs. But here's the part that I think is so, so powerful for you to understand. The brain is a pliable organ. We have learned through all kinds of seminal studies in dyslexia, specifically in neuroscience, in the ability to actually change the brain, that this is possible. So for Juliette, this happened within about 5 months. And so it's possible to reconnect letters and sounds in the brain. It's possible to do that in a short interval. This does not have to be years and years of struggle. But I think it's just really, really important for you to know that this is not something that you have to live with and struggle with forever, because that narrative is really out there. And a lot of people are still kind of subscribing to this view of the world that you can't do anything about it. And that's just simply not true. So with that, I would love to move us. Uh-oh, here we go. And Maria, I think even better. So like I'm gonna go through some of the things that you shared with me, but if you want to interject, please feel free to do that. I think it's really special that you're here. So would you like to just kind of share some of Juliette's story?
If you want, I'm happy to listen and interject whatever you would like from me. I just thought it would be cool to hear what you had to say. But so Juliette was sick with Lyme and mold, and that might be part of the reason she ended up with dyslexia. She had a lot of other brain issues too, very big visual impairment. At one point, she was considered legally blind. So we didn't have any idea that there was also dyslexia. It was really hard to get an accurate assessment from her to know were there learning impairments besides the visual impairment and the legal blindness. So that was really tricky. So it was this last one we did with the IEP in school and getting a reassessment that it was very obvious. Like they went to great lengths to make sure she could see the material they were testing her with for the testing day. And her oral expression was extremely high, like in the 97th percentile, and yet her spelling and her writing were extremely low, and her reading was low, but still on grade level. And we knew she was struggling to read a lot. And we were always struggling with, okay, well, if we blow everything up so she can see it, can she actually read it? And as time went on, it got clearer that just blowing things up and making them better for her eyes wasn't the whole deal. And when I read her IEP assessment, I think I both fell apart and got determined at the same time to like realize, wow, we've been ignoring that there's dyslexia, so to speak. And that's clearly here with what her scores showed. And now what do I need to do? Because she was really hating school at that point, like crying every day, telling me she had a horrible headache and a stomach ache, which I think were real. Like, I think she was working herself up. She didn't want to go to school anymore, and she used to love it. But I think the dyslexia and the amount of learning, everything had surpassed, like school had gotten too hard now. And this is like a little kid, and most of you listening can probably identify that your child is like a superhero and it's not making sense why school is so hard for them. You see them in all these instances be so brilliant and sharp. And I saw that with her as a little baby and as a little child. And when she learned to talk, she was talking about content, like hard scientific concepts that maybe 40-year-olds didn't understand, and yet she could. And somehow now she's not reading. So at that point, because I've seen her through so many mountains already with her health, like I live from a standpoint that I don't know of much being impossible, like the way people want you to think that dyslexia is what it is. Sure, it's going to give your child amazing things about them. They might see the world differently, but it doesn't mean that they can't learn how to hear sound like we do, and that they can't learn to read really well. And so something in me said, I need to find out who can help my kid with this. So that's kind of how I got to Dr. Troy's program. And probably in the matter of 2 or 3 days, I looked at several programs. It was just like it became my obsessive mission when I wasn't with my own patients. Um, so yeah. And then I got here because this is the one that I could do inside my own home for 10 to 15 minutes a day and make real gains. Like I felt enough trust by the end of speaking to her people that she, like my daughter, could change. So I don't know what else you want to say, but that's kind of the start
This is
of how we got here.
this is beautiful, and that I'm so glad that I turned this over to you because you just did such a way better job than I ever could have to tell her story. But something that I think you had talked about to me was like right at the beginning of that fourth grade year, just kind of seeing what that looked like. Will you explain to others like what was the day in and day out like for Juliette at that point?
I could, if I cry a little, I'm sorry. So she went from really liking, first grade was online. It was still COVID. We were in the middle of a move. But second grade and third grade, she just fell in love with school. She's so happy she's there. Was it perfect? No. Was she getting the grades or learning as rapidly in all sections? No. Like science seemed to be great. And why is English so delayed if, she's getting the tools? But then I questioned, were the tools for vision really happening? And then by fourth grade, she loved her first like 2 or 3 days. And as soon as the education started happening, it just fell apart. And I could say the specifics as to why it may have fallen apart. But one of the things is that it's like the dyslexia and where she was in school and where she was falling behind had kind of really caught up with her a mental awareness. Like, this doesn't make sense. And she started changing her identity. Like, I'm not that smart. I'm not like my friend so and so. And just saying really painful things for a mom or a dad to hear, something you never want to hear, because I started hearing limiting beliefs, and she didn't want to go to school. It just got worse and worse. So by February, when I found your program, it was like at an all-time low, but it started right away. And she had been doing pretty well, having had, a chronic Lyme and mold toxicity. We had come pretty far with her health, but it really declined at the beginning of the school year. She got sick. I think she was sick significantly 3 times before Christmas. And like maybe the fourth time was at Christmas. So it was just, she was emotional every day about hating school and thinking she's not a good student. And it was horrible, because getting her to school was like pulling teeth. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but my husband and I would feel like we lived a whole day getting her to school. Just, we were helping her get dressed because she wouldn't want to get dressed. We were giving her homeopathics to stop the headaches from the fear and anxiety. Like, there were just so many things we had to do to just get her out the door, calm her down. And I'd be sometimes calling the guidance counselor. I can't get her to come in. You can call me truant, but I don't know how to do this. And I was dangling all kinds of carrots just to get her through the day, whatever, you name it, Five Below, gift cards, like anything I could do to get her through the day and through the week. so that she'd have something else to focus on besides of all of her anxieties around how hard school felt to her. And her IEP wasn't really being followed the way it should. So that wasn't to help either. So the teachers weren't, they were doing the best that they knew, but there was big misses, and I was having a hard time correcting that. So she was just having trouble from all around, accessing her curriculum, the way she saw herself. We were exhausted trying to get her to school. And then we were also fighting illness again, because if any of you have an awareness of like a chronic illness, when too much stress comes in, it could wake itself back up, unfortunately, like Lyme disease. So that would uptick. And then there was asthma, and that would uptick. So we were definitely in a hard place.
Maria, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think a parent outside of a parent of dyslexia, of a dyslexic kid, may not completely understand everything that you said, but I would presume that anybody that's listening to this knows exactly what you're talking about and can completely resonate. Maybe not, it's not the exact situation, but they know the feeling of everything that you're sharing. And so let's shift and let's talk about the fun stuff, because it breaks my heart to hear what I'm sure it was like for Juliette day in and day out, what it was like for you and your husband day in and day out. That is not easy. And let's talk about the about the good parts and what it's like now. So would you mind just kind of sharing some of the ahas or the shifts, or, we can talk about the numbers and the data later, but I guess more importantly, the human side, like what's Juliette like now?
So she's herself, like she's so much more herself. That she's quite spicy and sassy and pretty intellectual and funny, and all of those things are really back. Like they're back to the point that teachers are already seeing parts of her that, like the last school year's teachers, I don't know if they even saw that part of her. She felt so bad. And she's making friends faster. She's not so focused on what she can't do. She still has to have like enlarged papers when the the computers that they provide her can't like expand words, because there's still a visual impairment, although the dyslexia is so different. And she just says to kids now, she's just special. She says it in like a funny way and snaps her finger. And before, we couldn't even get her to explain to kids like, hey, you just, your eyes see differently. That's it. That's all you need to say to kids when they're asking you, why do you have this big paper? And now she just looks at him and smirks and goes, I'm just special. And she does it like proudly, like it's okay that she has a visual impairment still, and that it's not holding her back like it was before. And she has like more energy to give the world now. Like there's more joy there. She can share that with other kids. She's more friendly, more willing to engage with people. She's also more willing to like her mind, like it's so much more of a growth mindset. I don't know if those are words your schools use for your kids all the time, but growth or fixed mindset. Like my daughter was that kid where even from early, if she tried a thing and she didn't know how to do it, let's just say it's soccer. Now, she also didn't know she had a visual impairment with soccer. And she would say to me at the end of like the soccer practice, why can everybody dribble faster than me? Like everybody, mom. And I would say, well, I wouldn't have known 3 weeks ago, but now I know that your depth perception is severely changed until we change that. You can't see the ball the same way as the other kids. And she go, well, I stink. And I'm like, no, you can't see the ball. And so in her mind, she would just make herself a thing. She would identify with being bad at soccer, where now she actually realizes like almost anything is changeable. Maybe she can't change her eyes from blue to brown, but there's so many things she believes is changeable. So much so, she has people in our family that she knows cannot read as well, and she wants for them to have the same gains that we made. And she is still improving on executive functioning tasks like staying on time and, remembering her homework. But she knows now it's changeable. She doesn't look at herself as somebody who's never going to get it together. She's now telling me to look for programs online because Dr. Rebecca Troy helped her so much with reading. Somebody's going to help her, like, be more orderly and keep her desk neat and all these funny things. So that's how she's different now. And she even says things like maybe she wants to help kids when she grows up. And like she was a kid, 6-7 months ago where she had a hard time knowing how to help herself, like with her own identity. And now she's got so much more energy. She's just looking outward, like, how can I be a service to the world? So that's pretty amazing.
Unbelievable. Okay, so I would love to hear. So first, I just want to acknowledge that everything that you're just talking about is about her as a human, her as a person, her spirit. And I think that's so important to acknowledge because this is so much more than a reading score or a spelling score. Like, yes, that is what we're celebrating
I
today.
forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot
No,
about
it's okay.
because and it's super important. I apologize.
No,
I can interject with that after you talk. I'm so
no,
sorry.
no, please go ahead.
Well, she's loving reading now, and she hated reading before. And that would make me cry because I grew up loving to read and I just knew the world was at my fingertips. And I know we live in the world of AI and we live in the world of computers and there's lots of ways to access stories now. But to just be able to like read your curriculum or read what's in your academic book or, read signs. Like she's funny now. She'll tell us like, hey, I never knew there was a store for this here because now we're driving down the road and yes, there's a visual impairment, but because the dyslexia is so much better, as long as the words are really big, she'll know what the stores are. So now it's almost like, hey, I want to go there, mom. Where before I didn't even have to worry about it. She ignored those billboards because she really couldn't see them between the dyslexia and the visual impairment. So her eyes are so much better. Her writing, like, it's not finished, but she started writing a little book. Like,
I love that.
who that's my child wouldn't have written, just to get her to write the most minimal in school was just heartbreaking because up until she had to write, she had like a good mind for stories. And then the minute she knew she had to put her pen down on paper and figure out how to spell something, she would like dilute her story down to something very, very minimal and basic. So she'd take lots of details away because there was no way her brain, her mind, everything could like write that, like what the story was originally in her head. So it's so different, so different.
Thank you for that. And so, will you just share? I know you and I in our conversation were talking about some of the big words that she had to read as part of the exit assessment. Will you tell me what that was like for you?
Yeah. So she got a 93% not reading some of the really big words. But when I saw what had happened, the one thing that we didn't do in the program, because we were still battling not loving school through this process, is that I wasn't reading with her. Her reading was separate, and we tried to keep her reading really in a realm where she could read it really well. So we weren't practicing long words. So even though Dr. Troy's program really helps you break down long vowel sounds and short vowel sounds very well, it wasn't like there was this place where you were learning 5 and 6 syllable words. So on the exit test, there are 5 and 6 syllable words. And I'm thinking, but every part of it, I knew if Juliette could see it individually, every part I know she can read. So like, what's the problem? So I decided after the exit test, just to take a couple of nights and like show her how to do that, because I told her we're not going to end this. Yes, you're done with the program and yes, congratulations. But Dr. Troy says we need to keep this up. And so a couple of the nights, I just got these long lists of words out and with lots of words, and we would just get through breaking them down and decoding them. And by the third time, we're sitting in the dance class parking lot. That was the only time we were going to get. I brought my list of words. We were 15 minutes early, and she just starts ripping off words like bioluminescence, repatriatization. She's 10. So this is hard for any 10-year-old, not just a child who was like diagnosed as severely dyslexic, I start laughing so hard out of joy. Like my kid is reading massive words and she's laughing with me. So it becomes more fun for her, less stressful. And she's just saying all these hard words, individuality, like you name it. These words were there. And so after these words were done, I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, I can read. I'm like, yeah, you can read. You can read fifth grade level and you can read really big words that are beyond fifth grade level. And she's like, yeah, and she was super excited. And so then you asked us to retake the test because of that, just to see what would happen. And, you know, she's even better than the 93%.
You know, and Maria, I'm glad that you said that because I don't think, like, we probably have to edit this because she ended up at the 97th, didn't she?
I don't know. You said 98 or 99 or I don't remember.
Probably was.
I don't
Let me
remember.
go back and look because I remember that you sent me, you sent it to me the second time and we ran the numbers again. And yeah, I can look right now, but it was probably 97, 98. Was it 98 or 99? Do you
I
remember?
feel like it was 98.5 or 99.5. It was something that I had a hard time believing. I know that. Yeah. So I'm not sure what it was, but I know it was even better. And it just
I'll look right now.
to know where she had come from, like to know how much she was unwilling to do and couldn't do, it was just so, it's so joyful to see her have so much more willingness now to like read things that she would have been afraid and avoidant. That's the other thing between the visual impairment and the dyslexia. There was so much avoidance in our life, not just with school, but with anything we wanted for her. And so now she's much more willing to read.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so, so much. I'm looking at this and it looks like it was the 99th percentile. So thank you for reminding me that we had even more growth that she did there, little bug. But you know, I'm really grateful because most of the time this is me telling the story or retelling the story, but we don't always have the privilege of having the mom, the person at the helm who went through this entire experience. So I'm sincerely grateful that you were here to share this, Maria, because you did it so much more justice than I ever could have. So thank you for that. So let's kind of go through the data and I want to show you what some of these differences look like and why this is so outstanding. So we kind of talked about this a little bit at the top of the call, although this 93% is actually 99th percent because she went back to retake it after she realized that she could read even bigger words. So here's what this looks like. When you are dyslexic and you are struggling with a concept called phonological memory or phonological awareness, it basically means that your brain is really having a hard time hearing and responding to sounds. So for example, if we said, say the word Germany, take away ma, what's left? Your brain has to think about, okay, Germany has got three parts and the middle part ma is going to come out and I've got ger and ni and I can put those back together. And so that mental Olympics is actually very simple for a person with a neurotypical brain for reading and spelling. And so when you have dyslexia, that is a very, very difficult skill. So for Juliette at the beginning, she had 11 of those correct out of 42. So she was only 26% accurate. 5 months later, she was 42 out of 42. So reteaching her brain how to connect letters and sounds, how to make those things possible, really, really had a significant impact on everything else. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So this is a copy of the normal distribution curve. So if you're not super familiar with statistics, I'll kind of give you a quick primer. But in the middle is the 50th percentile or average. And then you can see that there are these three lines above the mean and there are these three lines below the mean. Those are called standard deviations. And so we use those to help us to decide how effective a variable really is on whatever the subject is that we're studying. So we've actually looked, and researchers have actually looked to say, how much growth does a typical kid make in an entire school year? What does that look like? So this is the work of John Hattie, Dr. John Hattie. He has said that 0.3 of a standard deviation, or basically to go from this red line to the blue, is what a typical kid would do in a year. So you start fifth grade, you end fifth grade. That's the average growth that a child would have. But when you are dealing with a child that is significantly behind, you can't just grow the same amount that everybody else is growing, because then you never catch up. So you have to have a more significant growth point so that you have the ability to close the gap. So when something is moderately statistically significant, it moves a 0.5, or like half of the standard deviation, to go from here to here. Or if there is a statistically significant gain from whatever the treatment is, it's this 0.8. So it's like starting here and ending here. We know that statistically speaking, any kind of a treatment that has that kind of a growth is something that is 100% due to whatever you did to that subject. So let's take a look at Juliette's data and what that actually means for her. So again, I apologize, this actually would be up even higher than this. But if we started her where she was at the 34th percentile, and I will say that this is probably because she's so highly intelligent, Maria, that she got 34 in the first place. So kids oftentimes with high intelligence are able to memorize enough words to get by, but then the longer that those things get, the more it really breaks down, and it makes it very obvious that they don't have the skills to decode. But if she would have grown what a typical kid grew in an entire school year, she would have gone from the red to the yellow. Again, we've said like, oh, it's got to be more than that. If it would have had a statistically significant improvement for her, she would have gone to this brown. So still would have been great. She would have moved a significant amount. That would have been awesome. But Juliette actually moved 1, 2, actually nearly 3 full standard deviations of growth in 5 months. And so here's why that's important. Number one, I think it's really, really valuable to just kind of dispel this myth that if you are a child with dyslexia, you cannot possibly grow. You're never going to learn how to read. Like, that's just simply not true. And what's also really powerful is to know that this is a 5-month interval. This is not something that took her years and years to complete. This is something that she did within last school year. So just super, super powerful to see that you can actually close the gap for a child. When we look at spelling, the picture was pretty similar. So she started actually a little bit lower in spelling, which is not uncommon. She was at the 4th percentile when she started. Again, if she would have made that statistically significant growth, she would have made it to this brown, which still would have been good. We're going to celebrate that if that's where she would have gotten, but she actually moved 1, 2 full standard deviations above that, which statistically is just kind of unheard of. In addition, she had all of these other words. I think it was like an additional 23 of them that were phonetically correct, where she was off by just one letter. You know, if the word had an EE, maybe she put an EA. So she had all the sounds there, but maybe just chose the wrong pattern. So had those been correct, the spelling would have been at the 99th percentile as well. So massive, massive changes again within that 5-month interval. So I do want to celebrate Maria through this process, because none of this would have happened had she not done the work. And I think that's really, really important to articulate. Yes, we have a neuroscience-based program. Yes, it really, really works. Yes, it really moves kids, but you can't get these kind of results unless you show up and do the daily work. And so Maria was consistent. She was coachable. She showed up on the calls. She got help. She asked questions. And so I think it's just really, really important to acknowledge her in this process, because again, you can have the best program, but if you don't actually implement it regularly, you can't expect to have these kind of results. So kudos to you, Maria, for the work that you did. Do you care to say anything about, like, knowing that you didn't have a background in teaching, or that you weren't maybe an expert in dyslexia? How did you find that to be, to try to navigate this journey with Juliette?
It it was less scary than I thought, and I say that because I do have a bit of perfectionism I'm always trying to deal with, and I before I started, it didn't stop me from starting, but I worried how was I going to know what to do? But really it wasn't about what I just had to listen to the modules and watch what you were teaching me on the videos and then do the best I could to replicate that. And as long as I did that, I was fine. And sometimes I would have questions because, sometimes her responses were maybe a little different than what you warned us we would get. And then I would
Yeah.
have to come back to you and say, hey, when she does this, what does that mean? And, you would help me navigate that during the call. So it was, yes, I needed to be really consistent, but it was easier than I thought it was going to be. And I also realized it was easier for Juliette than I thought it was going to be. I mentioned this on my celebration call with you, but the first 3 modules where it was just super evident how she wasn't having all parts of her brain work together. It was super obvious then, and it became super obvious for her. So suddenly she's just aware about more things she's not good at. That was really an uncomfortable place for her to be. But in following what you did, and it was scary at first because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm telling my kid to say birthday, and then I'm saying, don't say day, and she's still saying birthday. And I'm like, okay, listen to me again. I want you to say the word birthday. Now I want you to take away the word day. And it took her a bit, like her brain couldn't separate birth from day. It was all one thing to her. And she'd look at me and she'd start to cry, like, she's broken. And I'm like, no, honey, this isn't about brokenness. This is really about your brain never learned to work together. And that's what Dr. Rebecca Troy is helping you do right now. So in those first 3 modules, it was just about staying really calm for her so that she could get through them. And after a couple hard days in each module, like really hard days, which was only 10 or 15 minutes at a time, it got so much better. And it got so much better for her too. Like she started realizing that with every challenge, she was able to overcome it every time. And that was so you breaking things up in these modules that she just got to keep like graduating from made her gain more trust in herself that she could learn things that she didn't know whether she could or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so I do think that that's a really valuable, just realization that, this is definitely a partnership with us and clients. And so, you can have all of the desire in the world, but if you're not really interested in doing the 10 to 15 minutes of work, if your child is not going to do that with you and you know that going in, it really doesn't make sense that we would try to work together. Maybe you do need to find an external tutor or somebody else to work with your kiddo. But if you can do that, if your child will work with you, if you're willing to take the coaching, we're confident that we can get you to a different neurological place. So this is something that we're really proud of. So this is our average client actually doubles what would be a statistically significant result. So we're super, super proud of our results-based community. We're super proud of our clients. If this interests you and you want to kind of nerd out on some of the data, please feel free to look at this citation here. This is a meta-analysis, so it's a study of studies of all of the impacted factors on student achievement. You can see that a lot of these top out at like 1.5 standard deviations. Juliette had like 3.0 standard deviations. So we're absolutely blowing the lid off of what this growth looks like, even in the top studies. So we're super, super proud of that. And so here's why it matters. I think just like Maria was sharing, her first celebrations weren't even about the reading data. Her first celebrations were about the identity of her child, her beliefs, what she is able to do, how she shows up in the world. And I think that that's really, really important to just kind of hone in on, because when you struggle and you continue to do that, there are inevitably missed opportunities. You continue to struggle with lots of different things. There are future opportunities that do get closed for you. And there are other people that do suffer because of this. So yes, the child with dyslexia suffers, but those of you who are parents of children with dyslexia, you know darn well that there are lots of other people in your home that suffer too because your child is suffering, whether that is a sleepless night for you, or we just had a meltdown, or that's impacting everybody. So when you do lean in and you have the ability to really shift how this looks, yes, you can absolutely increase their academic performance, but more importantly, you can increase their self-esteem, their confidence, they have better overall mental health, greater access to opportunities, which is why it's just so, so important that we kind of keep dispelling this myth that there's nothing that you can do about dyslexia. So if you are somebody that's listening and right now you're saying like, I don't know, actually, maybe I'm in this place where I see that there is this discrepancy. My child is really, really bright and it's just not showing up in their homework. They're struggling with things that it doesn't seem right that they should be struggling with. I would invite you to join our Dyslexia Discovery Workshop. We are having one in a couple of weeks. We'll run you through everything that you need to know and give you the assessments that you can give your child to tell you, yes, it looks like it is dyslexia, or no, actually, it just seems like they may not like it very much. So let us know, comment in the chat, email our team, and we'll get you in touch with how to register for that. And also, if you're somebody here, and I'm seeing some of you clients here too, thanks for being here because I'm sure this is inspiring you for your own journey. But also, if you're somebody who has been going through a tutoring process or your child has been getting help at school or whatever that's been looking like, and you are seeing that there's maybe some progress, but it's really not moving, it is likely that it's not gotten to the root cause of what was really going on in the first place, which is that their brain was not connecting letters and sounds. So I promise you that if you don't go back and address that, you will always have these residual struggles with reading and spelling. Yes, they might be able to memorize more. Yes, they might be able to do some things, but you don't see the kind of leaps and bounds until you actually get right to the heart of the problem, which is that the brain just isn't active in those areas. So when you create that activity, you can see some pretty miraculous things happen as a result. So Maria, is there anything that you'd like to say in closing? Feel free to share any words of wisdom or any last thoughts that you may want to share. Again, thank you so much for being here. Anything that you want to say?
The one is that my daughter didn't initially want to do this program and she was pretty depressed. So I just wanted to share that I really had to take her through the questions about why she was so sad and what she wanted out of her, school life, what she wanted out of her future. And it really took me like having to take a good look at her life in order for her to say to me, yes, I do want to do this program. So I know you mentioned if you don't think your child will want to do this, there's just a difference between whether they know enough or not about why they would. And then so it did take a little finesse, but it was great because every time she hit a wall and she thought, oh, this is hard, like the first day of a new module or something, I would just do my very best. Not a perfect human here you're looking at, but I do my very best to get calm, walk away if I needed to, but come back and go, let's talk about why you wanted to do this program because you ultimately said yes. What is it that you wanted out of it? And she'd be like, oh, I wanted to learn to read better. I'd be like, okay, well, that's good because I think it's happening. Don't you think it's happening? Yeah, a little. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just keep going. This is, the first day's hard, but it's okay. Remember what you wanted. And what do you want for school? Well, I want to keep up with the other kids. I'm like, oh, okay. That's great to remember this, right? So I just wanted to say that, there's two different kinds of no's from your children. There's a hard no, they're not there. And then there's the no because they're afraid and they don't want to do any more work. My daughter was the no because she was afraid and she didn't want to do any more work. She's had it. But when I attached it to a change in her life, then she did. So just wanted to share that. That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it is super valuable because coming back to your why is what motivates all of us. So again, I appreciate your story. I appreciate your honesty, Maria. I think that's really, really valuable to somebody who is traversing this themselves to see what is it really like, what was it really like before, what is she really like now. So I sincerely thank you. So if you are wanting to continue to be inspired, we do these every other week. So we do have another one of our amazing clients that's coming up in 2 weeks. And so you are welcome to join us again. But again, feel free to reach out to our team if you do need support. Again, you can just email support@retrainthedyslexic brain, and we'll get you in touch with whomever you may need to get you to the next steps. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate
Hey,
you being
Dr.
here.
Troy.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, you
Dr.
got it.
Troy, can I say something?
Sure.
So I watched Maria and Juliette. I'm Juliette's dad. So I watched.
Oh, hi, Juliette's dad.
Hi. So I watched them go from meltdowns to confidence to laughter. So it was interesting to watch that. And yeah, Maria did a lot to make this program happen. So, great job, Maria. But also the confidence level in Juliette. Like, I've been trying to get her to ride a bicycle for years, and she's always put it off. Said, I can't. And there was a boy involved in this, but she learned how to ride her bicycle in a day. So that was very inspiring. And
In like
the
5
car
minutes.
ride, yeah, like 5 minutes. And the car rides have gone from her playing with her iPad in the back or with her phone to, hey, Dad, look at that. There's the hardware store. Hey, Dad, look at that. There's this. Hey, look at that. So a lot more reading of signs, a lot more interaction with what's going on around her. So that's great. And then the level of reading has really improved. She's gone from graphic novels that I had to read to her to going to read the graphic novels with the different sets of print, and then wanting to go to the bookstore. So we went to Barnes and Noble, and she picked out a book. She picked, okay, open it up to a random page and just read a couple of sentences so I can see that you can read it. So she opened it up and started reading the book in regular print, which is impressive because other than that moment, it would have been jumbled all over and she'd have asked me to read it. So that's a great thing. So thanks a lot. I think the program's done a world of good for Juliette. So thank you.
Wow, wow. Thank you, Joe. And thank you for celebrating Maria in this process too, because it's not always easy to be parents of kids that are going through hard things. But I think your very strong message from both of you is that, keep believing in your kids, keep giving them opportunities to learn and grow, be loving and caring, and amazing things will happen. So thank you sincerely to both of you. It was really nice to have you here. Thank you to everybody for being on the call.